Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. And in today's video, we're going to be continuing Eminence and Shadow, The Shadow's Web, with Sid Kagenou of Spider-Man Season 1, Part 2. As always, if you're new to the channel or if you're a regular and like what we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that has to come out now and in the future. So with this series, it's going to be pretty unique compared to the other ones that I've done. Again, with a lot of these Spider-Verse stories, there's a whole lot to the Spider-Man lore and to Marvel lore in general that I feel never gets covered enough. So with this series, you might say it's the ultimate hodgepodge of Marvel stories, concepts, and ideas. But if anything, I'm taking elements that seem a lot interesting and I'm pulling them together into something that I think can be truly fun. Now, for now, this is just Season 1, so I don't know whether or not we'll do a Season 2 or anything else in the future. But the way I see it with this, instead of going with the conventional story, I just want to go balls to the wall, come up with ideas off the dome, and let's just see how wild and fun we can make this story. So anyway, without further ado, let's get into today's video. So as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. In the interrogation room, the Knights of Midgar were doing everything they could to get Sid to talk. And it wasn't like they weren't trying either. The beatings, the torture, their methods, it was all brutal. However, Sid had been training his whole life for this moment. He had trained himself to be able to absorb and take the punishment. Of course, at a time like this, if he had on his slime suit, then he could have easily have dispatched of all these guys. But he decided it was easier to play along and try to gain whatever intel that he could. A normal hero would have done things far more differently, but Sid did not see himself as a hero. At least, not the way that many would describe him, or what they would want him to be. No, Sid had been doing his research. He was able to find his predecessors, people who had been given the power long before him. There was a boy named Peter, another boy named Takuya, another boy named Miguel. There was a girl named Gwen, a girl named Jessica, and there was even a boy that was named Ben. All of them at one point or another had been chosen by Arachne, the goddess spider, and had been brought to this world to be its protector, to keep the revival of Diablos from happening. Of course, Sid admired all of his predecessors. The more research he was able to do, he found snippets and pieces, finding how they lived their lives, and correspondingly finding those of whom they served. Of course, the fact that he found this information meant that ultimately they all came to an end in one way or another. Most likely dying in an heroic final last stand against the cult. And that was to be expected. I mean, some of these guys worked in newspaper presses, some of these guys were mere scientists, and they worked mundane and menial jobs. So it was obvious that they didn't have the money or the funds to actually fight the good fight. They gave into hero complex, Sid often thought. Sure, he wanted to play his life like an NPC, to be the character in the background that no one noticed, but still, they took it to a whole new level. It was almost as if they weren't even trying to fight back. No, Sid was able to see the problem with all of his predecessors, and the reason why new ones had to keep getting picked. It was because they were acting more so on the defense and not really taking an offensive. If Sid had to take a wild guess, these guys never actually tried to hunt down the cult of Diablos, nor did they try to make any real changes in the world. They probably became heroes of sorts with their spider powers, They fought crime, they fought wherever they were needed, and maybe occasionally they would take to the offensive, but that was only when they felt like they truly needed to, not because they wanted to. They were nothing more but a dam that was holding back the raging waters from crashing onto the town below. But the problem with a dam is that eventually, no matter how strong it might be, when cracks begin to form, unless some work is truly done or changes are made, eventually the dam will burst and overflow, and all that you've been trying to fight back eventually comes crashing onto the unsuspecting people below. That's why Sid wanted to be different. It's why he took the offensive that he did with Shadow Garden. For too long now, the avatars chosen by Arachne had been serving nothing more but as a defensive stop measure, being the line of defense that kept the world safe from destruction. But the threat of destruction would always loom. Sid knew that no matter how much power he gained, in the end, if he acted like that, eventually he would die. Maybe one day the cult would finally overpower him. Maybe one day he'd find himself in a situation where he just couldn't match their force. These guys probably had no allies, no one watching their back, no team, nothing. Sid wasn't going to end up like the rest of them. No, he had made it his mission to never be that. He wanted to become the man that could stop a nuke. But even that was just minuscule. No, his goals had now gone to a newer height. He had a newer level that he wanted to obtain for himself. As the knights continued their interrogations, they were eventually stopped. The man in gold walked into the room, admonishing the boys for acting so harshly. He took a seat in front of Sid. Sid, deciding to put on his acting chops, he chose to play the role of someone who was truly terrified and afraid, who had no idea what was going on. Even though he couldn't see under the visor of the one known as the Golden Goblin of Midgar, one of the 6 saints. And still, though, the goblin gave off a calming aura. So you're Sid Kagenou. Word on the street is that you're pretty popular, kid. I didn't... Don't worry. I'm letting you go. I know you didn't do anything. Huh? Come on, it's easy to see that you're not the one responsible. If I had to take a wild guess, whoever it was had been monitoring you for a while. They probably waited for the moment where you would be the last person in contact with Princess Alexia, and then they made their move, knowing you would be the fall guy. I can see it in your eyes. I can see it in your power. Even if you tried with all your might, there's no way Alexia would lose to the likes of you. So either you have help in high places, or you've been in a setup, my friend. The Golden Goblin would release Sid and would let him go. However, there were still those who would be monitoring him, wanting to make sure that they kept up with his actions. In the meantime, Alexia's older sister, Princess Iris, would be continuing the search for her sister, who had not been seen in almost 5 days. She sat inside of her office with her trusted bodyguard standing by her side. To the public, he was known only as Captain Midgar, but in private, the two shared a much different relationship. Of course, on work hours, they had to keep it professional. The Princess, Iris, and her loyal guard, the Crimson Knight himself, the bearer of the power of the lion, Captain Midgar, aka Brian Braddock. I can feel your aura trembling, my love, Brian would say as he stood next to Iris as she sat at her desk looking out of the window. Well, of course it is. My little sister has not been found yet. All I can do is worry and continue my search. I promise you, she will be found. I have high regard for her and for her power. I don't believe that she could be taken down so easily. And if there's anyone who has the capability of surviving, it's her. I must say, your words do give me courage. No wonder why you are the inheritor of the power of the lion. For a brief frame of reference, I should take time now to explain a little bit about Captain Midgar. As you know, it's basically a stand-in for Captain Britain, but since Britain isn't in this world, it's Captain Midgar. But the same power sets and other sort of skills that you could associate with this version of Captain Britain applies to Captain Midgar. But the question of how he gained his powers. Well, as I explained, the gods of this world engaged in a war against Diablos. And in the final stages of the conflict, many of the gods did indeed die sealing away Diablos, making sure that he could never be set free. However, their death did not come in a way that you would think. You see, before they died, many of the gods passed on whatever power they had left to humans that they deemed as worthy. Because of this, these humans had greatly enhanced power that's been passed down through the generations respectively. And for the powers of Captain Midgar, aka Captain Britain, this would be no different. Of course, it's because of this passed down power that's allowed for the humans to grow as strong as they are. Through marriage and things of that nature, that's how more and more powerful beings come to light. Even those who are considered on the weaker end of the spectrum are a lot stronger than the plain mortals of old. This was a last-ditch effort. In case Diablos ever was to revive or attempt to revive, then the humans at the very least would have some extra form of power or measure to be able to defend themselves. When it came to overall power, you could say that Captain Midgar ranked among some of the strongest of the country of Midgar. As such is why he was held in high esteem, and why the potential marriage between Princess Iris and Captain Midgar would be one of high priority, as you could only imagine the children that could come from that sort of union. And it was also the reason why marriage between those of noble clans and of higher authority were of such importance. Because when two powerful beings get together, you obviously get the idea. Inside of the office, the Golden Goblin would make his way, Midgar standing in attention as the two would come face to face. In the past, the Golden Goblin had tried to recruit Captain Midgar to join his team, the team he had created known only as the Six Saints. The Six Saints of Midgar, to be more specific, 6 powerful individuals that served the kingdom. However, the good captain turned it down, instead deciding to take a position where he could serve at the side of Princess Iris. Of course, for her own safety and for his own reasons and feelings. Besides, in his personal opinion, he really didn't like that bunch. They might have called themselves the Six Saints, but in his eyes, sometimes they didn't act so saintly. But you might be wondering, who are the Six Saints of Midgar? Given the term six, you probably have an idea of who may or may not be on this team, but the roster itself may actually surprise you. First, front and center, obviously, was the leader of the Six Saints, the Golden Goblin, with the title, the Saint of the Sky. To his left, Mysterio, the Saint of Dreams. To his right, Thundara, the Saint of the Earth. To the bottom left, Morgana Le Fay, the Saint of Love. Below him, the being known as Crimson, but many describe him as the Red Hulk, the Saint of Fire and Brimstone. And then finally, the cyclopic being himself, known only as the Fury, the Saint of Judgment. They were known as the 6 Saints of Midgar, 6 of their most powerful warriors and champions, who had joined together to serve under the royal family and the kingdom as their 6 noble champions. Their duty was to the crown and to the people, and as such, they were given special authority and leeway. You could say that outside of royalty themselves and a few higher-ups, they held mostly a lot of power within the city. There wasn't any place that they really couldn't go, and anything that they asked for, they could receive without end. Some could see this as a corruption of power, if you will. An organization of individuals that don't answer to any other authority outside of the authority of the ruling class. Well, you could say so, but for the most part, they always acted in the interest of Midgar, so as a result, they were given autonomy. They were mostly allowed to have free reign to do and come and go as they wished. And as such, you never know what could be expected. But to the eyes of the people and to the people of the country, they were hailed as the 6 champions and the heroes. If things ever came to worse, it were these 6 individuals who would be looked to in a crisis. The true heroes of Midgar. As Sid would make his way back to his apartment, he would be surprised to see that Alpha had returned. But not only was she back in town, but so were the other members of Shadow Garden. She would give report of the efforts they had made in the last 2.5 years, of how they had managed to gain allies and supporters, and that their influence was continuing to grow, just as Sid wanted it to. Sid was surprised by the news that they had over 114. He didn't expect them to grow so big and so quickly. Of course, in the grand scheme of things, was he looking for an army? Not necessarily. But he did want a group big enough to be able to operate and get things done, even if he wasn't always around. As such, the preparations would begin, as now that Sid was set free, it was time to go and rescue Alexia, and also to figure out what the cult could possibly be up to. If they were truly the ones behind this, perhaps it was some corrupt knight or politician. Sid had to be careful in these regards. Not every situation that happened was because of the cult of Diablos. No, there were also those who were just evil scumbags, and thus taking them off the street was simple enough. Also, robbing them was another good method that came out of all of this. Remember, all of this cost money, and as such, you had to get it somehow. So why not rob the people that were already deadbeats to society to begin with? You didn't have to steal from the innocent, and you could boost your own funds. For Sid, it was the most concrete of methods, although he did want to try to get into business and politics and other things of that nature. There were a whole lot of ventures for making money. You just always had to keep an open mind and look around every corner, because you never know what you could expect. As such, Sid would position the members of Shadow Garden to make their move. They were to cause some distractions in various areas to try to keep people off of their trail, while Sid would be going out himself, his slime suit now morphing around him, taking on the form of the costumed vigilante, the being known only by a few names. Some called him the Spider-Man, or the Return of the Spider-Man. Others called him the Shadow, the Enigma. He preferred the Eminence himself, but he'd figure it out later. Now it was time for action. As Sid made his way through some dark alleys, he would stalk a few in particular, a couple of knights, ones of whom had been trying to frame him to begin with. He dispatched them quickly and made short work of them all. If they were trying to go this far to pin Alexa's kidnapping on him, then it was obvious that they must know something. In the meanwhile, with the confusion and the chaos that was brewing all around, as Alexia found herself being restrained by magical seals, the mad scientist who had been drawing upon her blood injected it into a strange-like creature that had been chained next to her. It was soon set free and released as it grew in massive size and began causing trouble up on the surface above. As Alexia had managed to set herself free, she would take up a sword she found laying around, dispatching of the mad scientist and attempting to make her escape. However, before she could do so, she would be met by someone she wasn't expecting. Now, my dear, you weren't supposed to make it out so easily. Zenon, so you were behind all of this. Well, I can't give myself all the credit. I had some help. But yes, of course, I wanted your older sister, but as much as I hate to admit it, that pain in the ass Captain Midgar would be in the way. And even I have to admit I have my limits. Even with all my resources, it would just be a waste trying to take him down. Thus, the easier and safest option was just to go after you. And may I say, you made it far too easy. Alexia would be angered at his words as she drew the sword she held, attempting to strike him down, even showing off more of her talents than he had ever seen in their sword practicing days. But it made no difference. In the end, he was still able to best her. I must say, copying your sister's flash technique, you certainly are full of surprises. But this makes no difference. In the end, you aren't even a quarter of the fighter that your sister is. Your sword skill, everything you're capable of, you are simply too weak. And I can't let you go so easily, especially now that you've seen my face. But things are starting to get a lot hectic up on the grounds above. I'm going to have to move you to another facility. Is that so? Another voice would ring out, a faint emerald-like aura glowing in the shadow, the insignia of the spider. Outstepping from the shadow and into the dim lights of the tunnels below, a figure clad completely, his identity unknown, the mark of the spider on his chest, the emblem growing along with the gauntlets that glowed on his wrist and his eyes, the aura that he ensued, the magical pressure. It was unlike anything Alexia or Zenon had ever experienced. I'm afraid you're going to have some trouble with that. The bases that you were using in this vicinity, they've all been raided and destroyed. You have nowhere to go, my friend. So, do yourself a favor and give up now, while I'm feeling merciful. The mark of the spider. So, that bitch of a goddess has brought yet another one, another lamb to the slaughter. I see. So you're aware of my predecessors. The last one died only 16 years ago. Expected another one would appear so soon. But in the end, it truly makes no difference. Try as you might, each one that is raised up is only to be struck down. You will be no different. Funny, I see this story playing out in a much different way. While I do appreciate my predecessors and the fight that they fought, I have no intentions on walking down the same path as they did. You are nothing more but a lapdog through and through. You fight for a pointless cause, fighting for a goddess who does not have the power to finish us off herself. She fears us. That's why she calls upon you weak champions. If she were to come down to the mortal realm and try to challenge our power, she would be killed, and the last goddess of the old pantheon would be destroyed. In the end, there would be no more hope. I can't argue with you on that front. She is the last one, after all. It would be foolish of her to engage in combat with you. I don't doubt that she could get rid of mostly all of you, but still, there's always the risk to her own life. It was smart of her to choose champions. However, the only downside is that the champions don't always make the best decisions. That is until I came along. You are one arrogant bastard. And tell me, what makes you so different from all of the other ones that came before you? Let me guess, you're going to be a different kind of hero, a hero that can overcome Diablos? Overcome Diablos, yes, but a hero I am not. You see, I am nothing more but a shadow. I lurk in the shadows to hunt the shadows, and I destroy them. And the way I see it, the biggest shadow across this very world is the shadow that Diablos cast. And I agree with you. Diablos has been asleep for far too long, and I think it's time that he awoke from his nap. Are you proposing an alliance then? This could change everything. With you at our side, I think you misunderstand. I say he's had a long slumber and it's time for him to wake up, but only because I believe he deserves eternal rest. Eternal rest? But of course, I want Diablos to be revived so that I can be the one that has the pleasure of taking his life. Wait, you're serious? No. Surely you jest. You truly believe that you will be the one to kill the great Diablos? It took the power of all the gods just to seal him away. And even then, their seal weakens. Century after century, it grows more and more fragile. The power we take, just its portion, is enough to strike fear into the last that remain. But you believe that you will be the one to slay Diablos. I don't just think it or believe it. I know it to be true. I know it so much that I have it written down in my heart, in the heart of those that follow and believe in me. I have come to this world with one purpose and one purpose only, and that is to be justice, not a hero. As Sid would approach Xenon, they engaged in combat. No matter what Xenon tried, Sid's reflexes were too much for him. His spider sense being able to detect every attack, even the one from behind, and his raw strength was more than enough to outmatch him. Do you know what it means to be true justice? It means that justice will not discriminate. It acts on the good of all, not on a select few. The justice I want to be, the eminence and shadow that I aspire, a title that I will make a reality. I will become the being in this world, the one of whom will stop all evil. There will be no need for another avatar, for I will be the last. I will do away with Diablos once and for all. I am the one that hunts down the shadows, no matter what they might be, big or small. All the same, they will fall at my blade. As Xenon was backed into a corner, Sid would press his blade to his throat. Remember me, for just as with Diablos, I will be the last thing you ever see. I could say the same to you. Zenon would pull a vial of pills from his coat. He began eating them and his body began to transform into a monstrous amalgamation. You sprout big words for someone so small. Maybe your goddess can choose a better champion in the future. For I believe that you and your story, it will die in the depths of this sewer tonight. He would attempt to use the power he had gained to strike at Sid. While his blows were much harder and a lot more sharper, Sid would back away to create space, shooting out webs on both opposite walls of the tunnel. He pulled on them with a tug, forcing the concrete slabs to come slamming in, sandwiching him on both sides before delivering an uppercut from the front, knocking him forward a great deal into the stone wall in the back. As he arose back to his feet, Sid would close the distance between them. Before he even had a chance to lift his sword, the blade ran through his heart. Your death is inevitable, but still you can serve some use. Tell me, who in Mestfault are you working with? I know that the Red Queen has to be behind this. So tell me, who has she sent to work in the cult of Diablos? So, you believe that tired rumor also? Tired rumor? You are truly a fool. You believe that the Red Queen is the one behind the cult. If you truly believe that, then you will not live long in this world. Then enlighten me. Who is behind the cult of Diablos? Tell me. Go to hell. Sid could see that on Zenon's tongue, there lied a seal. Explosion magic. Troublesome. Sid quickly backed away before grabbing Alexa as he swung through the tunnels, making his way to the surface before the explosion could engulf them. As they arrived at the top, Alexia would be surprised. Surprised at all of this. At this Spider-Man or whoever he was. If anyone asks, you freed yourself and you saved yourself. What? Why would I even say that? You're the one that... I did nothing. As far as I'm concerned, I never existed. You never saw me. What? Are you some vigilante trying to hide in the shadows? Do you wish not to take credit for your deeds? I don't believe in the term vigilante, nor do I believe in the term hero. I believe there's only good and evil. I fight on the side of good, but the good for all mankind. So no, you don't have to label me as anything, because I am nothing. I'm nothing more but a shadow. Alexia tried to rush after him again, but he was already beginning to fade away. As a cloud began to roll over the moon, so too did the shadow that creeped between the both of them. Take care of yourself, Lexi. By the time the cloud had finished fading away, so too had the Spider-Man. Alexia, having no trace of him or where he had gone. Sid would meet with the members of Shadow Garden. It had been a while since they were all able to gather like this, and now they could finally have a chance to go over everything they had learned. The facilities that they had destroyed were indeed being used by the cult of Diablos, but what Sid had learned was even more shocking. From what Xenon had said, he almost alluded to the idea that the Red Queen of Mesfault wasn't actually responsible for the cult of Diablos or for the potential revival of Diablos. Of course, Alpha and the others couldn't believe this even to be true for a moment. The idea that the Red Queen, who had been a part of the country that served as the natural enemies towards Midgar, then if the people of Midgar have their judgment misplaced, we can't rule it as a certainty, Sid would say. For all we know, Xenon could have easily have just been lying, trying to deceive us. But still, it would change everything. So many people are convinced that Mesfault and that the people, that they are our enemy. There's nothing to say that they're not. Even if the Red Queen herself isn't responsible for the cult of Diablos, it doesn't change the fact that the countries of Midgar and Mesfault are still at war with one another, or at the very least not on good terms. If it wasn't for the dark mountains that divide the two great countries, warfare could have been even more treacherous. But still, who do you think could really be behind the cult? Hard to say. The only thing we can do now is continue our search. If we keep doing so, I believe we'll find more to the truth. I think our search should be more focused on the school. I don't know why, but I think the answers that we seek will most likely lie in Midgar Academy. I'll continue to keep my eyes open, and you guys, keep me informed of any changing news. All members of Shadow Garden would nod in understanding, as Sid would have to return back to class. As he did so, during his lunch period, he would be stopped as Alexia would speak with him. Sid was happy that she had managed to save herself and come home. At least that's the story that's being told, but Alexia knew otherwise. As the two of them continued talking, Alexia soon found herself feeling something she never thought she would. For everything she had gone through and for everything she had experienced, there weren't many in this world that actually spoke their mind of her and told them what they really thought. But all the same, there was something about Sid Kagenou, a boy who was unordinarily ordinary, who was as plain as a simple piece of bread that wasn't even toasted, without even a speck of salt. Someone that could be nothing more but an afterthought. And yet for some reason, in some way, Alexia felt like he played more of a role in her life than anyone else ever really has. Of course, Sid didn't see it that way. Alexia was a good girl. She could be a bit vain at times, but all the same, that was how most aristocrats tended to act. What the girl lacked was her own self-confidence and self-worth. You shouldn't try to compare yourself to others. You're fine just the way you are, no matter what people say or what people think. You're a truly impressive woman. Thank you. As Sid was preparing to leave, now believing that since Xenon had his crimes outed and, well, now that he was dead, there wasn't any need for them to continue their fake relationship. But Alexia didn't want it to be fake, at least not anymore. I mean, I know we only pretended to date, but who says that it can't be real? Sid simply smiled as he turned back to Alexia. While it was truly fun and worthwhile, I have to say, in the end, you and I come from two completely different worlds. Oh, come on, I know you don't really... What I'm saying is, there are things in my life, things that I can't really explain right now. But maybe someday. For now, take care of yourself, Lexi. With that, Sid would walk away, leaving Alexia there. Although what he said, take care, Lexi? When Sid turned the corner, she followed after him immediately, but he was already gone. Sid Kagenou, an ordinary student at Midgar Academy. At least that's what everyone thought. And for Sid, that's what he wanted them to think. He respected his predecessors, never mistake that. But there were things in their life, mistakes that they made. Sid couldn't afford to make those same mistakes. Things like love, relationships, a future. All of that meant nothing as long as the cult of Diablos existed. As long as the potential threat of Diablos existed. Sid, he once had his sights set on being someone who could stop a nuke. To stop the most powerful inventions of man. But now he realized that his thinking had been so minuscule, he had to think on an even greater scale. Sid Kagenou, the Eminence in shadow, the Spider-Man of Midgar. He would become something greater, something stronger. He wouldn't just stop a nuke. No. He would become the shadow that could even eclipse a god. In the meanwhile, Princess Iris had called for a meeting. It wasn't even of her own volition. Before she could even be the one to call it, she had been summoned by someone else. The Golden Goblin, along with the other members of the Six Saints of Midgar, Thundara, Crimson, the Red Hulk, Mysterio, Morgana Le Fay, Fury, all of them had assembled. I believe you know the reason for our meeting. You said when you battled against that mutated woman in the streets, you came across a woman that claimed to be a part of Shadow Garden. That is what she said. And from your sister's report of a being that was marked with the spider. These are all troubling rumors that are now starting to be spread between the cult of Diablos and this Shadow Garden. I agree. You had beaten me to it, but I had called this meeting specifically. I want to open an investigation into the cult of Diablos and into Shadow Garden. Do you know which one we should trust, milady? The Golden Goblin would ask. That's the thing. I don't know. Until then, we will work with caution. I believe I can count on your support. The Six Saints would all stand in attention, the Golden Goblin speaking for them. Trust and believe, for the safety of Midgar, nothing will escape our sight. Not this cult of Diablos, and not this Shadow Garden. The Golden Goblin looked down at the table below as he looked at the sketch of what Alexia had described to them, the sketch of the being known as Spider-Man. So, it seems we will meet once again, Spider-Man. This concludes Eminence in Shadow, The Shadow's Web. What if Sid Kagenou was Spider-Man? Season 1, Part 2. As always, if you enjoyed today's video and everything else that we have to offer, then please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings that has to come out now and in the future. Also, if you haven't, make sure you check out yesterday's video as we concluded the series of Kill la Kill, The Web of Life, What if Spider-Man was in Kill la Kill, Parts 9 and 10, Part 10 being the series finale. And stay tuned for tomorrow's video as we continue Neon Genesis Evangelion, The Spider's Thesis. What if Shinji Ikari was Spider-Man, Part 9. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings, signing off, and I'll see you next time.